Marquis, Director of the Institute of Caribbean Studies and the Reggae Studies Unit at the UWI Mona campus. At the Institute of Caribbean Studies / Reggae Studies Unit, we offer a diverse range of activities, teaching, learning, and research around many areas, including Caribbean studies, cultural studies, creative industries, entertainment and cultural enterprise management, among many others. We also offer a range of activities, seminars, symposia, conferences, and various events that are geared towards showcasing the research and the analysis that many individuals have done and continue to do around these diverse areas, particularly as they relate to the lives of our cultural creators within the Caribbean region. One of the very exciting and very informative events that we host annually is the Bob Marley Lecture. The annual Bob Marley Lecture was conceptualized by Professor Carolyn Cooper, also the originator of the Reggae Studies Unit. This annual lecture showcases the work, research, analysis, and output of individuals in academia and elsewhere about the culture, life, and activities of individuals who are a part of Jamaican life and culture, as well as from the broader Caribbean life and culture. This lecture was named in honor of Jamaica's most celebrated cultural icon, Bob Marley, who, as we know, is an internationally renowned reggae ambassador whose work and life continue to be a part of the global phenomenon. This 17th annual Bob Marley lecture that you're about to see was delivered by Cindy Breakspeare under the title Beauty and the Beast, A Bridge to the Natural Mystic. This very provocative lecture brings us through a journey with Cindy Breakspeare of her times and her life with Bob Marley and her own analysis and the meanings that she makes of this overall phenomena. In addition, as the title suggests, Cindy Breakspeare also showcases very important and some new information that many of us may not have heard before. As a part of our output from the Institute of Caribbean Studies, I am very pleased to have been a part of this 17th staging of the annual Bob Marley Lecture, and I do hope that you will find it informative and interesting. I also encourage you to join us at the Institute of Caribbean Studies at the UWI Mona campus for the various stagings of some of the events that we showcase. For example, the International Reggae Conference held biennially, and the Rastafari Studies Conference, the Walter Rodney Lecture, and other activities that you will hear more about. Do enjoy this lecture. Thank you for sharing with us.
Professor Waraboko and other visiting professors who are here with us in the audience, members of the university, students, friends, visitors on campus, Dr. Donna Hope, former classmate, and someone who I have a tremendous amount of time and respect for. Cinderella, Damian, Christian, Leo, and other members of the family. I bring you greetings this evening. Good evening. I consider it a privilege to be standing here to be introducing certainly one of my icons, Cindy Breakspeare. It's very difficult sometimes to make the connection between a woman who has charisma, who is artistic, who is feminine, who walks to the beat of her own drum, who is beautiful, who is a master mother, and someone who combines all of it in one package for what you're seeing sitting right there in red. Cindy, to many of you, is not only beautiful on the outside, but she's beautiful on the inside. Many years ago, in 1976, she walked away with the coveted title of Miss World. But many of you don't realize that she was Miss Jamaica Body Beautiful before that. And since that, she's captivated not only the hearts of many Jamaicans, but many persons around the world because of her infectious smile and her green eyes. Idle craft for some of you who might be too young to remember, was one of those institutions in Jamaica that facilitated leather, shell work, and beautiful jewelry that I don't think Jamaica has seen since. And many times I say to her, you need to do some more ITIL craft. Tonight, Cindy comes to us going full circle. And I think it is a timely rendition for her to be standing here, because not only will you see her journey, but you will come to respect her even more. One of the unfortunate things that we have done sometimes as a country is judge people by the way they look and the things that we hear about them, without actually feeling the passion and the sincerity exuding from what their experiences are. And so this evening, I'm so proud to introduce my friend, my icon, and someone that I have looked up to for such a long time and have tea with at least twice a week, Cindy Breakspeare.
Goodness, what a welcome, what an introduction. I mean, what does one say after that? Except to tell you, if you know how I did vex when she win. Just come box me off of the crown. Right? Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers and sisters, brethren and sistren, family, and very, very dear friends. To my mind, there are only special guests here this evening, all protocol observed, only special guests here this evening. You took the time and the trouble to come out once again to hear what someone, that someone being me on this occasion, has to say about the late, great Robert Nesta Marley, OM. And I would like to thank the university for my place here today. It has become a place that I cherish, respect, and cultivate. A safe place I can visit at my leisure. A place that I am transported to when I least expect. A place so full of wisdom and life's lessons that I marvel to this day as they reveal themselves over and over. I would like to start by telling you a bit about myself, my background, so you will have an understanding of where I was coming from and how necessary a bridge to this 20th century prophet was. I was born in Toronto, Canada in 1954. Yes, I'll be 60 this year. To a Canadian mother and a white Jamaican father. He had been in Canada studying textiles, met my mom, and the rest, as they say, is history. In search of warmer weather needed to support my mother's health, we moved to Jamaica in 1959, along with my older brother, Stephen, my constant companion and playmate. As children, you often fail to notice that there is trouble in paradise, and when my parents went their separate ways, a couple of years later, we were devastated. Stephen was sent to St. Mary's College above rocks, and I was sent to Immaculate Conception Convent. Up until then, we had occasionally attended Webster's Memorial Church on Halfway Tree Road. We were not overly religious by any means, and my memories of Sunday school are pleasant and fun, free from trauma, pressure, and devoid of devils with red-hot pitchforks, waiting to mete out certain punishment if we failed to toe the line. To be sent to a Roman Catholic convent at the age of 7 was a shock to the system, to say the least. And I have over the years taken to referring to myself as a grateful recovering Roman Catholic. The nuns were remote, very strict, and certainly provided no substitute for the love one's own parents offered. Boy, let me tell you, this thing is a heavy thing we're going through right here. Now, I'm telling them earlier today, the baby is going to be born today, you know? So, anyway, during the 4 years I spent there as a boarder, I often felt lost, lonely, and abandoned, and lived for the holidays when I would be reunited with my brother. Visits from my parents were infrequent, I thought, compared to the other students, and my sense of family began to dissipate, replaced by the understanding that friends would have to suffice. As I look around me tonight, many of those friendships are alive and well today, and I hope my friends know how much I appreciate them. Immaculate was indeed the finest girls' school in Jamaica, and I am eternally grateful for the foundation I have received there, and have often noted that if I have any discipline at all, I learned it there. The emphasis, however, was definitely on religion. We were up very early for Mass every morning. We prayed before and after every class, every meal. There was rosary in the chapel every afternoon, and Mass, rosary, and benediction every Sunday. I grew into a rebellious teenager, fascinated with the opposite sex, oblivious to the benefits of education, and eager to be out of there in the world, commandeering my own life. In and out of trouble, it was actually a relief to both me and the school when I finally graduated. And although I was not allowed to participate in the final graduation ceremony, I have been reliably informed that whenever this practice has come into question, I have been cited as the example. Well, look at Cindy Breakspeare, they say. She wasn't allowed to graduate, and she turned out just fine. However, after 9 years of schooling, I left Immaculate with the feeling that religion was rigid, judgmental, divisive, and lacking in compassion. A brief stint at Duff's Business College proved too much of a struggle between my fingernails and the typewriter keys. So I moved on. With no money for higher education, the best job was the one that looked best. One day, while working at Gemcraft, a jewelry store in Tropical Plaza, a couple of English guys came sauntering in. Browsing the plaza, I suppose. One of them, a well-known DJ based in London by the name of Dave Cash. He took one look at me, and as we say in Jamaica, him skin catch fire. We started hanging out along with my brother and girlfriend, Virginia Burke, and ended up at a house on Russell Heights occupied by none other than Danny Sims. We parted hearty and were still at it in the wee hours of the morning when there came a knock on the front door. Danny disappeared for a short while, and on his return declared, "You know who that was? That was Bob Marley." So I'm talking him. "He's gonna be a big star one day." We nodded in dutiful agreement and went back to our partying and thought nothing more about it. I don't believe any of us at the time were even aware of Bob at all, and probably didn't realize that we danced to his music frequently at parties. I first became aware of Bob when Catch a Fire was released in 1973. My brother Stephen, affectionately known as Reds, was the music aficionado in our group, and most of the music we listened to at that time was brought home by him. There were 2 albums in heavy rotation, Catch a Fire and Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. So you can imagine how thrilled we were to see them both in concert in May of 1974 at the Carib Theatre. Although they were completely different genres of music, there was a commonality in the message. Take care of the planet. You are your brother's keeper. Drugs are not the way to go. Stand up for the poor and oppressed. These ideas began to seep into my subconscious, and the notion that spirituality was so much more rewarding than religion started to take root. The years spent in a Roman Catholic institution had not left me with much. My father had migrated some years back. My mother, herself in need of an anchor, had set us free from her nest. So, my brother and I, as close as 2 peas in a pod, found our way through a mutual friend in the know to 56 Hope Road to rent a 2-bedroom flat on the ground floor of the main house. We were not the only tenants on the compound. Judianne McMillan and Diane Jobson, to name a couple, also lived there at one time. Well, Reds and I loved living there. The compound was buzzing with activity, music, football, and Rastafari. We were indeed from the echelon of society, which believed Rastas to be a population of machete-wielding religious fanatics, crazed on ganja consumption, to be avoided at all costs. But we settled right in, completely at home, and free at last of social mores and parents. Our friends frequented our place, an eclectic mix of beautiful people: Errol Thompson, Tony Johnson, Nancy and Virginia Burke, Patsy Yun, Ronnie and Susie Burke. We came and went as we pleased, smoked our fair share of ganja, and reveled in the understanding that as young adults, the world was our oyster. Somehow we sensed that we were positioned at the heart of something great, something special. The atmosphere at 56 was always charged with electricity, excitement, and rebelliousness of a deliberate nature. Bob Marley and the Wailers rehearsed there. Some of them even lived there, including Bob. And the music, which was about to overtake the world with an irreversible resonance, was being created, rehearsed, memorized, and celebrated right there in the same yard where we lived. How could we resist the call? Why would we resist the call? To honor some childhood indoctrinations from institutions we had grown to resent? We were wide open, totally receptive to what else was out there in the way of a moral compass. The rest of the world was waking up to the message and the power of Bob's music. And although Jamaica was running a tad behind, held back by prejudices and fear of the unknown, there was a nucleus of devotees right here in the heart of Kingston Town. Rastafari was the foundation, and we were like moths to a flame. To listen to the music and feel the pulse, the rhythm, move your body was one thing. But to really hear the lyrics and absorb the message was to be totally hooked. It was to understand that there was another way to find emotional comfort, courage, a sense of self and spiritual well-being. Another way to find and nurture the God in you and indeed in all of us. Looking back now, I realize just how lucky we all were to have been there in that place at that time, privy to the creative process, witness to the evolution of this 20th century prophet, privileged to be the people he ate with, worked with, kicked ball with, and in my case, brought new life into the world with. We were there. We were part of it. Not even understanding then how amazing what was unfolding before our very eyes truly was. We were there, stoned, drunk on the potency of single-mindedness of purpose of one man who now has 44 million Facebook followers, second only posthumously to Michael Jackson. Did we know? We didn't know. We felt. When Bob first began to approach me on a personal level, I was petrified. Yes, I knew him. We said good hello in passing in the yard. Yes, I knew him. But to be a fan, a devotee of the music, part of an elite group of spiritual rebels was one thing. But to be the intimately involved person with this man, the woman who would stand by his side and reflect all that he was about, was entirely something else. I wasn't a Rastafarian, nor was I sure I wanted to be. Here once again was that word religion, full of rules and regulations, just what I wanted to be free of. Things you could and couldn't do. And then there were the social implications, uptown meets downtown. How on earth was that going to work? So much to think about. Small gifts like a freshly picked mango or an invitation to come outside for a walk in the cool night air started to become the norm, and I could not deny that we were fiercely attracted to each other. Fascinated and separated simultaneously by our differences, and so we began to build a bridge. The same bridge that has brought me here today. Bob was strong, fit, and virile, tough as nails and boyishly charming all at the same time. A man's man who wore denim and khaki, frequently used chew stick to clean his teeth, and smelled of peppermint soap. Super confident and more driven than any human being I have ever met, he was not only attractive but intimidating to a young girl like me. And I knew instinctively if I were to enter into this relationship with him, it would change the trajectory of my life forever. We would stroll out to the fence at the front of the yard and stand there talking for hours about life, Rasta, consciousness, and whether or not one knew what your purpose on earth was, or were you just battering around aimlessly? It was unsettling, to be sure, the company of this man, who was so different from anyone I had been involved with thus far, so serious about his own purpose in life. How and where could I possibly fit in? During our tentative dance around each other, Bob went off on tour for 10 to 12 weeks. Skill Cole and the gang continued to visit me from time to time at the nightclub in Northside Plaza where I now worked, to check on me, see if I was still available, see if I was behaving myself, and to bring greetings from my somewhat elusive suitor. Greetings that always let me know that he was thinking of me while away and would return soon. A return filled with expectation and anticipation. Finally, he was back. I knew the day was imminent. I heard the VW bus come through the gate, and I just knew he was in it. His footsteps up the stairs to my front door confirmed this not long after. He was back. The waiting was over. There were no more questions that seemed to matter. It was what it was, and it would become what it would become. Another piece of the bridge fell into place. Naturally, I had continued to pursue my own career goals, and that pursuit led me to a job at Spartan Health Club as an instructress in June of 1976. I took to it like a duck to water. To be totally immersed in physical culture was a wonderful way to spend every day and fit in perfectly with the now vegetarian lifestyle I had embraced as a result of Bob's influence. Another piece of common ground. The bridge grew stronger. My involvement there and the encouragement of Mickey Houghton James led me to compete in the Miss Jamaica Body Beautiful. The prize for winning that was to compete in the Miss Universe Bikini in London. Again, I won, and I remember being in New York with Bob at the Essex House where he often stayed, waiting for the call from Jamaica to say whether or not I had been accepted to compete in the Miss World, also held in London. Bob strummed his guitar, sitting in a corner of the room in a chair. I potted around, antsy, and longing to make life happen in a big way. The phone rang, and the answer was yes. And I was to get home ASAP to prepare to journey once again to London to compete in the ultimate beauty pageant, Miss World 1976. Bob simply smiled a wry, knowing smile and said, "See, I tell you them would accept you." The Miss World competition for me was an opportunity more than anything else. With no family backative and no university education, I made a conscious decision to exploit my greatest God-given talent, my good looks. It paid off and turned out to be the best job I ever had. You traveled the world at someone else's expense. They rolled out the red carpet for you wherever you went and paid you to come there on top of it. I could never understand the young women who complained bitterly at the end of it all. What, never had it so good and felt so bad? I told them to work me as hard as possible. I would go anywhere in the world they wanted to have me, and consequently had an amazing year getting to know the world as an unofficial ambassador for Jamaica. Being Jamaican was the thing I was most proud of when it came to facing the microphone. That exotic blend of cultures, colors, and ethnic backgrounds. A melting pot that was truly diverse, now sprinkled with a heavy dose of Rastafari, a new seasoning to be explored and digested. The night I won stands out in my memory as an overwhelming moment, unparalleled and unforgettable. And to this day, watching the videos of it still fills my eyes with tears and floods my heart with emotion. Already a lifetime ago, it has remained a part of the fiber of my very existence. And the memories of that wonderful year are as vivid as they are faded, if that makes any sense. I was the last Miss World to do the Mecca tour, a 6-week tour of England, Scotland, and Wales. So the faithful viewing public, which in 1976 was a mere 28 million, could have an opportunity to meet the new Miss World. I would visit as many as 5 bingo halls or social clubs in one night. These places were patronized by little old ladies who came out with their autograph books going back 20-odd years. They looked you up and down, made their comments openly, and added your signature to those already accumulated since the pageant's inception. I recall walking down the aisle of one bingo hall, an old theatre, to hear one lady declare, "Well, I wouldn't give you tuppence for her." Wherever you went, they wanted to hear about Jamaica. And of course, Bob. The tabloids went crazy, as is evidenced by the newspaper clippings you see on the screen. My chaperone, Nancy Burke, who traveled from Jamaica with me, was certain I would be terminated for the scandalous press my relationship with Bob was receiving. Well, fortunately, that never happened. And the age-old adage proved to be true. No publicity is bad publicity. The Jamaican community supported me wholeheartedly through the length and breadth of the UK, including the Rastafarian community, which, although small at the time, was rapidly growing. A few days after winning, my explorations of London took me down to Portobello Road, along with a group of friends. In search of a restroom, I made my way into a Jamaican restaurant called Bachelor. As I pushed the door, dressed in full regalia, having just come from a personal appearance, the two Jamaican women who were tidying the place looked up in total belief, elbowing each other. "Syria, Syria," they whispered, loud enough for me to hear. Says me now brightly, "Walk on in ya, me ears a ring. Una in ya chat me." Yes, one of them stated unapologetically, "We want to know why, when you have so much pretty black girl in Jamaica, Bob would have take up with you." Well, see, you know, I said to myself, baptism of fire. I took a deep breath, swallowed my spit, and prayed for courage. Within 5 minutes, I kid you not, every Jamaican in a 10-mile radius was in that restaurant to witness the impromptu trial of the newly crowned Miss World, who claimed to be the girlfriend of Bob Marley. We parted the very best of friends, the restaurant owner and I. Pictures taken for the wall, believe it or not. And I would like to think that I left them with the understanding that to be a Jamaican is so much more than the color of your skin or where you are placed in society. A truth I had to put forth for the duration of my reign, as it would become evident when I visited Nigeria that I wasn't black enough, in fact not at all it seemed, and when I went to Reykjavik, Iceland, I clearly wasn't white. Who or what was a Jamaican anyway? Well, the world is still asking that question today, why we run so fast, etc. They're fascinated by this hybrid that evolved over hundreds of years, brought about by our strategic positioning on the globe and the potpourri of cultures that typifies the Jamaican persona. The reactions of those two women pretty much sums up the reactions to my relationship with Bob. His folks didn't like me any more than mine liked them. Yes, it really was Beauty and the Beast, and depending on where you're standing, I might have been the beast and he the beauty. Perspective is everything. We were crossing the line. We were crossing the line, breaking down a social barrier. And I have a girlfriend who told me that her parents sat her down categorically and told her, categorically, "Now you see what Cindy Breakspeare has done? Don't even think about it." Pictures of us are few and far between, and we spent a lot of our time together in private, away from the prying eyes of the press, the judgment calls of fear-driven critics, and disapproval of the protectors of social boundaries. So while all of this was taking place in London, Bob was in Jamaica spearheading the Smile Jamaica concert, scheduled for December 5th, 1976. An initiative designed to break down political barriers, unite opposing factions, and diffuse the ever-growing tension and violence in society. Bob was indeed a man on a mission who loved his country fiercely. He desperately wanted to see the divisiveness born of political rivalry come to an end, as it clearly benefited no one except maybe the politicians. There were no cell phones in those days, so daily contact was not the norm, but I knew what was happening back home. The evening he was shot, December 3rd, I was preparing for an engagement when the news broke. I cancelled that immediately and remained quietly in my room, refusing phone calls from the press for comments. It was some time before we knew that he was not badly injured, but the idea that anyone in Jamaica could be persuaded to commit such a heinous act against its most beloved son was like a bullet to the heart. Here Bob was, giving his all to try and bring about a rapprochement between the warring factions, and this is the thanks that he got. He had tried so hard to not appear to be taking sides. He was not for any particular side. He was for the people. He felt their pain profoundly and took the responsibility of being a mediator so very seriously. The concert took place as planned, as Bob was more determined than ever to show all of Jamaica that he feared no one, that good would triumph over evil if he had any say in the matter. And then he left Jamaica. At that time and up until the end of his life, 56 Hope Road was always flooded with people in need of help in one way or another, sick, broke, victimized, or just plain hungry, in need of a job, money, or opportunity. The pressure was immense, and they were convinced that Bob was the man to help them. It was exhausting for him, but he got up to face it every day with a vengeance, believing he had been given a job to do, a job which others should have been doing, but had come to him by default. So let's not whine and complain. Let's get on with it. That was part of his greatness, that selflessness, that total commitment to helping the weak, the poor, the underdog, became his mandate, and he embraced it wholeheartedly. It was not always easy, and the strain showed on him at times, but he never shrank from the task. We agreed to meet in the Bahamas for Christmas of '76. He had left Jamaica after the shooting, and it would give us the opportunity to spend some time together. It was a nice, light-hearted break. We went to the beach, visited the casinos, and saw the Staple Singers live in concert. All the crew was in attendance: Skill, Neville Garrick, Gilly, Zagai, an Ethiopian who had become a staple in the camp, just to name a few. And life seemed pretty normal. Bob was, as usual, at the center of it all. Cooking and exercise. Music. Bob didn't dwell unnecessarily on the attempt that had just been made on his life. But underneath it all, he was deeply hurt to have to come to the understanding that we really had not yet emancipated ourselves from mental slavery. Not at all. Our minds were not free. He had almost been a casualty of political war. Don Taylor had been shot 5 times. Rita was also injured. And it was, in fact, nothing short of a miracle that no one had died that night. In no hurry to return to Jamaica, Bob went on to London, and I returned to Jamaica for the first time since winning the title. Well, officialdom was not so pleased with me for remaining in the pageant when the issue of apartheid had raised its ugly head. 9 countries had pulled out, but being that the government of Jamaica had not sent me there, they felt they could not ask me to withdraw. In fact, no one asked me to withdraw, and I took a decision that the possibilities offered by the prospect of a Jamaican winning, that would be me, the title far outweighed the traction I could gain by withdrawing. Maybe I was just young and selfish. Let me say that here tonight. Young people are. There would be no postage stamps bearing my image, no aeroplanes with my name on the side, and no government reception to welcome me home and offer praises for putting Jamaica on the world stage. I flew into Montego Bay and took a small craft to Tinson to avoid all possibility of any ugliness here at the airport in Kingston. Little did I know, Mickey Houghton James, God bless him, was there with a welcoming party, and I need not have worried. 1977 unfolded for both Bob and myself, traveling the world mostly separately as we pursued our individual paths. His stardom was now on a meteoric rise, and what I didn't know until I read Neville Garrick's comments in the foreword of a book entitled Stir It Up, written by Chris Morrows, was that up until 1976, Bob was not yet a household name in England, but being linked with a Miss World, who at the time was still a very popular figure with the English public, a new awareness of Bob, his music, and Rastafari blew up and matured into a fascination, the like of which had not been previously experienced by any other Jamaican artist. His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie's family, who were seeking political asylum in London, were frequent visitors to the camp, and the large house at Oakley Street became much like 56 Hope Road. The band, the devotees, the fans, not the same, and the needy, all in search of one person, Brother Bob, Jabi, Skip, Gong. There was no rest by then, no matter where he was, and it was during this year that the Big C would make its fateful entrance. Bob's toe, injured in a football match in Paris, refused to heal after months of treatment. Malignant melanoma was diagnosed, and although it was recommended to remove the toe, he would have none of it. The nail and nail bed were removed, and a rectangular piece of skin taken from his thigh grafted over the area. He exercised extreme caution during the healing process and cared for the toe like a newborn infant. He continued to tour, playing music to adoring fans all over the world, and there are no shortage of pictures of Bob with his foot bandaged, guitar in hand. During that year, I managed to attend a few concerts in London, and we regrouped regularly at Oakley Street. I have wonderful memories of us cooking at 3 a.m. and taking long soaks in a hot tub to get the chill out of our bones. Bob had his own suite in the house, and I came and went at my leisure, careful to scrub my face clean of makeup and remove as many of the trappings of my title before coming home. One didn't want to anger the elders and put Bob under any unnecessary stress by flaunting the fact that in the eyes of his followers, I was everything he should not have been looking for, the antithesis of the Rastafarian woman. I paraded scantily clad for all to see and seemed oblivious to the fact that there were rules governing women's behaviors and mode of dress to be observed. All in good time, Bob would say. There was always tomorrow to become the things that you are not today. Well, one night I arrived home. There was no opportunity to scrub off all the makeup. And I thought, okay, I've made it in before everybody else. No sooner than I closed the door behind me, it opened again, and in stepped Bob. So I turned around with a look of shock and horror in my face. See me here? I catch you. Good old days. Truth is, the world loves a winner, and I do believe that saved me in every arena. Exodus was released that year, and the public's love affair with Bob Marley again mushroomed to greater heights as they were allowed for the first time to really get an insight into the softer side of his personality. This tough, edgy, militant soldier could actually write the softest, most beautiful love songs, infused with pearls of wisdom and bits of scripture so profound they made you weak in the knees and pricked your conscience all at the same time. I was to be credited as the muse for many of these beautiful songs. I am honored. Who knows? Another detail that, as they say, is history. I remember the first time I heard Waiting in Vain at a rehearsal in London. I thought to myself, oh God, if that isn't written for me, I'll surely die. The keyboard's poignant opening refrain and the haunting guitar solo that are now so indelibly etched in our musical memories broke my heart, and the entire rehearsal listened spellbound, mesmerized by this simply exquisite song, only one of many. By the time I gave up the Miss World title in November of 1977, I was already pregnant with Bob's son, Damien. I took off on a whirlwind trip to Kenya and Nigeria, unable to understand why I felt so lousy all the time. When the truth finally revealed itself, I knew it was time to pack up my traps and head back to Jamaica and settle down to await the arrival of our child. I journeyed back to London via Miami in early '78, and it was during this brief visit with Bob's mother that she felt it her duty, I believe, to inform me beyond any shadow of doubt that Bob was in fact married to Rita. A small detail he denied. I accepted it with a degree of resignation. The horse was gone through the gate already, and the future would take care of itself. I returned to Jamaica just days before Bob's triumphant arrival at the Norman Manley Airport, the first time since the shooting. We did not travel together, as he knew the airport was going to be pandemonium. He was met with a tumultuous welcome. Busloads of people made their way out there. They stormed the tarmac. Their hero was home. The now heavily documented One Love Peace concert was already in the making. On April 22nd, I sat in a packed stadium along with his mother, Sidella, and other family members, 6 months pregnant, and watched in awe as Michael Manley and Edward Seaga joined hands with Bob in the middle, trying once again to effect a peace between the JLP and the PNP, the same initiative previously thwarted by political violence, the same ugly monster we suffer from today. Shortly after, Bob left to go on tour once again and was actually off the island when Damien was born in July of 1978, and it would be almost a month after his birth that his father returned to meet his youngest son. Rita and Sister Minnie came to visit the newest addition to the family, maybe to satisfy themselves that he really was Bob's child, who knows? It was fine. Damien's resemblance to his father was obvious from the day he was born. Rita and I were no strangers to each other and would go on to spend Christmas together at Bob's mother's home in Pinecrest, Florida, along with Diane Jobson. A motley crew indeed. What am I missing there? Cute pictures, oh my. Jamaica was fascinated with Damien, a beautiful child, the love child. He had a mop of curls and clearly defined brows like Bob's. He was embraced by the public and the press, attracting his fair share of attention. Attention he did not particularly care for. We, Damien and I, lived at number 9 Russell Heights, where Damien was actually born, and Bob, who by then mostly lived at 56 Hope Road, came and went from the home he had provided for us. I liked to think of my house as a safe haven, a respite from the crowd and the craziness at Hope Road, which had totally taken over his life by then. It really didn't matter where in the world he was. If Bob was in town, the people would come. I decorated his quarters at 56 Hope Road for him, custom furniture and lots of animal print. It was stylish and rootsy at the same time. I rarely stayed there, as there was no such thing as privacy or downtime, and I preferred to leave all that pressure there and for him to get a chance to clear his head. I started my own business, MPhil Craft, in 1979, along with Donna Core, and we threw ourselves totally into exploring what we could make in the way of jewelry and home accessories, with the emphasis on natural, hence the name MPhil Craft. A Rastafarian word meaning pure, natural, and without pollutants. Bob loved any kind of creative endeavor, and he brought us our first imported raw materials by way of an enormous duffel bag full of beads, findings, and cords, etc. from London. Then there were the shells from Australia, which took poor Diane days to clear. The most spectacular array of Pacific gems we had ever seen. We were in heaven. The business grew and began to develop a name for all things exotic. Bob would come up to Russell Heights at 2 a.m., full of excitement, into the workshop, where we were still at it, pull up a stool and say, "What you want me to do for you now? Me's a tradesman, you know. Give me something to do." I was very interested in making large pieces of furniture out of driftwood, and used to say how much I wished I had a pickup or some kind of large vehicle to transport such things. One day, Bob drove up the hill to the house in a powder blue Ford Transit van. Jumped out, came to the front door, and handed me the keys. "What's this?" I said. "Well," he replied, "don't you say you need something to carry things in? See there?" He took off while I stood there, mouth agape, jumped into another vehicle which had followed him, and went back to work. That was Bob. If you were doing something constructive, positive, creative, he was right there. He actually did saw the top of a driftwood coffee table made from a tree root that night. I often wonder where it is today. The transit van was his idea of a really great gift. If you were waiting for a little blue box marked Tiffany, forget it. Whatever could fit in that box just didn't have any use. In April of 1980, Bob was invited to Zimbabwe, formerly known as Rhodesia, to perform for the independence celebrations. They couldn't afford to pay him, the band, and the cost of all the equipment, stage light and sound, for an event of that magnitude. So he spent his own money and shipped everything from London to make it happen. The stadium was packed to capacity, but there are actually more people outside than inside. And those outside, dissatisfied with the fact that they were unable to see the man they revered, stormed the venue. The police tear gassed the arena, and it became total chaos. Such was the love and admiration for Bob in Africa. To understand the true significance of this occasion, one must watch the footage of the performance, see the looks on the faces of the people, and feel the energy being generated by the crowds. I think there was a really nice, some really nice footage of it in the film, the documentary Marley. Their hero was in the house. Later that same year, in September, Bob hit the road once again, on tour. He opened for Lionel Richie and the Commodores on September the 20th, 1980, and blew the place away, connecting for the first time with a black American audience in the US, as he had not done before. It is no secret that up until then, his audiences had been largely white, and he was anxious to break into that market. It was a victory he was more than ready for. So one can only imagine the level of disappointment when he collapsed while jogging, just days after his last recorded show in Pittsburgh on the 23rd of September. as the tour had only just begun. Intensive tests began at Sloan Kettering Cancer Specialist Hospital in New York. Bob decided to return to Miami to continue the process at Cedars of Lebanon, where he felt more comfortable. I joined him there. Again, we were all in attendance. Rita, Diane, Yvette, myself, and the crew, the ever-faithful brethren. In short order, Rita and I traveled with him back to Sloan Kettering in New York, as it was absolutely the best place for cancer treatment. Yes, the cancer was back, this time in his lung and brain. Looking back now, I think we were all numb with fear, unable to even really process what was happening. He was angry, naturally, at this cruel twist of fate, to be cut down in his prime, confronted by his mortality. They began very aggressive treatment, which resulted in the usual nausea and vomiting, etc. I read from the book of Job on the first day, while he fought to cope with the massive doses of chemo. Over the next few weeks of treatment, which seemed endless and very difficult, he was actually allowed to smoke herb, as they already knew that it helped. And we journeyed to and from the hospital every day with food and moral support, trying to remain upbeat. On his release, Rita and I shared an apartment, along with Bob, where we could cook, take care of him, and have the children around, so things could feel as normal as possible. What? Yeah, I hear you. Talk up the thing. Talk up the thing. Okay, I'm going to turn it up now. Oh, goodness. This was no time for petty jealousy and bruised egos. It was a time for one love, in the broadest sense of the phrase. She would hold the fort while I went out for a while. I did the same. My dear friends Nancy and Virginia were living in New York at the time, and I would run away to them whenever I could. Cooking, comforting, and caring for a great human being who was now fighting for his life. If this was what he needed, then this was what we would do. The night we cut his locks was heartbreaking. The lights were dim, and we burned incense, and again read from the Bible. His hair had begun to fall, and the weight of the locks on the few remaining strands still attached to the scalp was very uncomfortable. Along with everything else he was going through physically at the time, there needed to be relief of some sort, somehow. He marveled at how light his head felt once they were gone, and his concern was for the children's reaction, seeing him without them. He wanted to handle it himself, his way, so as not to scare them. He joked about it with them, keeping it light and trying to make it seem like no big thing. And as usual, the people came and went. After all, they had needs. A decision was taken for Bob to seek further treatment at Dr. Issel's clinic in Germany. He had had the greatest success up until then and was the only doctor who was reputed to have cured a melanoma on the face of the earth. Rita and I both wanted Bob to go to Mexico, where Steve McQueen had been treated. We felt the climate, the culture, the food, etc. would be more to his liking. However, Germany won out in the end. We were, after all, mere women. What did we know anyway? I left Damien with a friend in early 1989 and made my way to Germany to see Bob. I beg your pardon. In early 1981, and made my way to Germany to see Bob. A single parent, I couldn't leave indefinitely, and it certainly was not the place for a 2-year-old. I could only stay for a few weeks. It was bitter cold. The snow was up to our knees. We went to the clinic every day for many and varied treatments, all designed to fight the disease in one way or another. But I think it was clear to all of us by then, Skill, Pee-wee, his doctor from Jamaica, Neville, Gilly, that we were losing the battle. It was a very sad time, needless to say, and Bob underwent a number of different surgeries as he continued to remain strong and resolute in his fight for the life that the world so admired. In early May, the clinic in Germany said there was nothing more they could do for him. Bob was flown privately back to Miami as the first stop on his way home. He never made it. Damien and I arrived in Miami on the 10th of May, 1981. We would see Bob for the last time that day. While dressing Damien to go back to the hospital the following morning, we got the news. There would be no more visits. Bob was gone. Jamaica was devastated. Their favorite son had flown away home to Zion. Whatever would they do now? I'll soon get it together, don't worry. Who would inspire them? Who would listen? Who would help? Most of all, who would care? During Bob's funeral at the National Arena, I sat in the back with Kat and Donna Core. There was no front row in the seat for us. I was definitely the other woman. The streets of Jamaica were lined with grief-stricken mourners all the way to 9 Mile. They had come out to say their goodbyes as Bob made his way to his final resting place in St. Anne, back to where the story all began. And the rest of us would be left to get on with our lives, pick up the pieces without him, and start the work of understanding what his legacy truly meant. I later married Tom Tavares Finson and went on to have 2 more children, Christian and Leah. I felt it was important to raise Damien in a family, the kind of family I understood, while giving him the best possible education and a sense of stability. He was allowed to visit his brothers and sisters whenever he and they wanted, toured with them during the long summer holidays, and was encouraged to be a Marley among Marleys whenever possible. He was taught to respect his father's legacy above all else, to understand the responsibility that came with it. And looking at him today, I think we did a pretty fine job. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Bob died interstate, and when the legal battles took us to court in New York in 1992, it was now time to get up and stand up for my rights. It was an unpleasant time for all concerned, but as I explained to the judge that day in court, the truth must be recorded. In the future, when none of us are walking this earth any longer, and someone goes to check the archives in New York City, the records must show that it was Damien's stepfather and I who had supported and educated him up until then, no one else. All sorts of claims were being made. You can't just talk the talk, I remember saying to those who tried to dissuade me from getting involved. You have to walk the walk. Is Get Up, Stand Up just a song we dance around to when we are in a party mood, or is it a way of life? Isn't it true that your principles only mean something if you stand by them when it's not convenient? I was never big on letting anyone, thank you. I was never big on letting anyone trample on my rights. So I explained my position to Damien, went to New York, and said my piece. I have no regrets. I suspect he understands better today than he did back then. I can still hear Bob saying in that sharp, convicted voice in an interview that has been played over and over, "'Cause you see, my right is my right." You know that clip? Yeah, man. When Bob's mother, Sedella, died in 2008, we again walked the bridge to gather at her home in Florida. We celebrated her life, all dressed in white, with prayer, music, food, and stories, the usual symbolic rituals. It was bittersweet, this coming together once again. Rita, myself, Diane, Bob's siblings, and the many grandchildren, family friends, and well-wishers. We knew it was important to pay tribute to this remarkable woman who had given us an amazing son, embraced us all, and continued to show us the way when Bob was gone. I was deeply moved to be once again drawn in by the sheer strength of the natural mystic that Bob was. Such an aha moment. We expected to see each other. We needed to see each other, and we were glad to see each other. I thanked Rita for having myself and Leah. You had to be here, she said. You were here from day one. Damien was shattered by his grandmother's passing. He stood behind me, quiet and contemplative. We gave each other strength. We held up our small piece of the bridge. Damien displayed a passionate interest in music at a very young age. We encouraged it, and we performed all over the world on the Bob Marley Festival. Many doubted it and were sometimes scathing in their comments and criticisms. It bothered me then. It doesn't anymore. Today, he is a 3-time Grammy winner, the only Jamaican artist to win a Grammy outside the reggae category. Yeah, man. I have to beat up my chest a little bit. I'm the only one to win 2 Grammys at one time. Enough said. Time is the master, and I shall, God willing, spend my 60th birthday later this year on the high seas with all my children and perhaps grandchildren, rocking to the sweet sounds of reggae music on the first ever Welcome to Jamrock cruise. Damien's brainchild. I can't wait, and I never dreamt I would be so eager to see 60 roll around. It's been 33 years since Bob said goodbye in the flesh, but his light burns brighter than ever through his music and through his children. I was fortunate enough to travel to the west coast of the U.S. in summer last year, Santa Barbara to be exact, and I noticed while watching the thousands of people pouring in to see Bob's sons in concert, they were almost all of them, wearing a Bob Marley t-shirt. Wow, I thought, looking around. I wonder if these boys understand that this isn't really about them at all. It's still about Bob. Today, after more interviews than I could possibly count or remember, it is my greatest joy to watch Damien take the stage while Donovan keeps the flag flying tirelessly overhead. Shia Kaur, Cat's son, is there. David Cole, Skill Cole's son, is there. Nesta Garrick, Neville's son, is also there. Just to name a few of his amazing support system, too numerous to name, all part of today's generation of Rastafari. I thank them all for the support that they give Damien. He doesn't do it alone. We stand on the side, Christian, Leah, and I, mouthing every word, while the old music meets the new, blending seamlessly, held together by that bridge, that same bridge that we began to build so long ago. I know beyond any shadow of doubt that I will never have to hang my head in shame when Damien steps up to the microphone. He is his father's son, not perfect, but perfectly conscious of the awesome responsibility handed down not only to him, but to all his siblings. As I read in an interview once, when asked about imitating his father, he replied, "But I don't understand you. Mango bring mango, it don't bring orange." And I would like to take this platform to urge all our artists in Jamaica today to take full responsibility for the things that you say. Every time you open your mouth, remember, please, if you can sell 1 record, if you can sell 1 million records, you can sell 5 million. Where 1 child is listening, there are 5 more. You are influencing them. So please, make it good, make it positive, make it uplifting, make it constructive. That is what we need. Bob was indeed a natural mystic, indisputably, right up there with the greatest. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mandela, as is evidenced by the fact that his legacy continues to grow. It has never diminished. His music remains on the charts, untouchable and untoppable. To have to your credit, in 1999, Album of the Century for Exodus, along with Song of the Millennium for One Love from the BBC, speaks to not only his lyrical brilliance, but his commitment to mankind, to being a humanitarian, a champion of the poor and oppressed from one corner of the earth to the other. We are so very fortunate, this tiny little island of Jamaica, to be able to claim such a man as a son of our soil. And I feel certain he will be made a national hero someday in the not too distant future. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the world is wondering what the holdup is. Yes, may I throw a word after you, Minister? As for me, I was truly honored and more than a little bit shocked to see myself explaining to the world the meaning of Rastafari as I watched the beautiful film Marley come to life on the screen 2 years ago. A job I thought should surely fall to someone far more qualified than I. I am grateful to all concerned, especially to Rita, for the opportunity to share on that amazing platform. Again, the unity, the love created by Bob so long ago overcame any ill will or rivalry which could have kept the story from being less than accurate. I rarely read books on Bob anymore, as there's too much in misinformation, too many errors, and sometimes downright lie. I'm urging potential authors to be diligent in their research. Recently, I read a book written by a young man who was not even alive when Bob was walking this earth. He had a few glaring errors there. So, potential authors, please do your homework diligently. As the world, the focus of the world's eyes are still very much on Bob, very, very much on Bob. And we need to tell the truth. The subject of Bob, his life, his music, his impact on the world, has remained a favorite topic for me. True greatness comes along so infrequently that for those of us who actually knew him, we are so blessed. Although I am aware that to this day, there are those in society who have never understood, accepted, or forgiven me for the choices that I made. Jamaican people have never ceased to express their appreciation for the relationship we shared and the child we brought into the world as a result of it. In fact, I have a girlfriend who called me up one day. She said, I have a story for you. A young Rastafarian man trying to spokes me up, and him said to me, come now, man, you be my Cindy Breakspeare and I'll be your Bob Marley. Oh, goodness. In my travels, the love and respect and at times reverence that total strangers extend simply because I knew him is overwhelming, and I know it has little to do with me and everything to do with him. Did Bob love me? I hope so. Did he love me above all others? I don't know, and it doesn't matter anymore. I believed he loved us all in his own way, in his own time, and for many and varied reasons. What matters and what is truly important is that he left us a legacy so rich, so important, that we have been able to love him enough to keep it living. His lyrics, so thought-provoking, they make us want to be the best person we can possibly be, our very best self. Keeping the bridge strong, the bridge between uptown and downtown, between black and white, between wife and lover, between children, legitimate and illegitimate, not that it matters. The bridge that has most certainly spanned the political divide time and time again as the people of this country come together to sing his songs with one voice every year on February the 6th. As I look at Damien today, I know he is my living bridge, the cables of which are as strong as the locks down his back. A bridge constructed of human endeavor, total commitment and selflessness. The One Love Bridge. A bridge I have traveled so many times it feels like home to me. A bridge needed today no less than it was 30-odd years ago. Bob will outlive us all, I am sure of that. And I will be eternally grateful to Jah, Providence, Fate, God Almighty, or whatever power, higher power one looks to. Grateful for stretching that bridge out before me, keeping me on it year after year, as I truly believe that Bob, a natural mystic, showed us that one love is the answer. Thank you so very, very much.